Commission will now come to order. To the audience, there are agendas listing all the public hearings that will be here tonight on the table outside the double doors. I would like to advise all the applicants that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a simple majority of those members present. Anything less than 4 votes is a denial. Applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of more Planning Commission members being present, if they so desire. Our first case, I think we better bet on. Consideration of minutes from the regular meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission held on September 20th, 2018. Are there any additions, corrections of the minutes on that date?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for approval of the minutes as presented.
I'll second. Thank you, Mr. King. Second, Randy. Thank you very much. Please cast your vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Our first case of the evening, petition for a conditional use permit for an off-premise sign billboard in the C2 General Business Zoning District on Lot 4, Block 159, Casper Addition. Located at 1329 South Poplar Street. The applicant is David DeWald and Lamar Advertising. A staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recommendation is that if after the public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the requested conditional use permit meets the 2 reasons and 6 findings necessary for the approval of a conditional use permit found in section 1712, 240G and H of the Municipal Code as outlined in your staff report, it would be staff's recommendation that the Planning and Zoning Commission articulate its findings and apply at a minimum the following 3 conditions of approval. First, pursuant to section 1712, 240I of the Municipal Code, the conditional use permit shall be exercised and all conditions shall be met within 1 year of the date of approval, or the conditional use permit shall become null and void. Second, the placement of the sign structure on the property shall be at a minimum 100 feet from the adjacent residentially zoned property to the east. And 3, the maximum height of the off-premise sign as measured from the pavement on South Poplar Street to the top of the sign structure shall be limited to 35 feet. Regarding code compliance, staff has complied with all public notice requirements of section 1712, 240, the Municipal Code pertaining to conditional use permits, including notification of the property owners within 300 feet, posting of the property, and publishing legal notice in the Star Tribune. Staff did receive 1 public comment regarding this case, which has been included for the Commission. Section 1712, 240G of the Casper Municipal Code states that no conditional use permit shall be granted unless the Commission finds that 1, the conditional use is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the title, will not substantially impair the appropriate use of the neighboring property, and will serve the public need, convenience, and welfare. And 2, the conditional use is designed to be compatible with the adjacent land uses and the area of its location. When making the decision for a conditional use permit, the Commission must consider the scale of the operation in relationship to the 2 other similar issues as expressed in the 6 considerations outlined in 1712, 240H as are listed in your staff report also. Mr. Chairman, the application before the Planning and Zoning Commission requests approval of a conditional use permit to install an off-premise sign or a billboard in a C2 General Business Zoning District located at 1329 South Poplar Street. The subject property is occupied by a residential structure and abuts property zoned R3 on the east and C2 on the north, south, and west. Land uses in the immediate vicinity are a mix of single and multifamily residential as well as commercial. Pursuant to section 1796-050C, off-premise signs require the approval of a conditional use permit in order to be located in the C2 zoning district. The maximum size permitted for an off-premise sign in this location would be 250 square feet, and a maximum height would be 50 feet. The proposed sign is 35 feet in height, and the faces are approximately 250 square feet. An off-premise sign is defined as a sign that advertises or directs attention to a business that is located or conducted somewhere other than the same lot or parcel on which the same building upon the sign is, or within the same building upon the sign is located. Off-premise signs along arterial and collector streets must maintain a minimum separation of 300 feet from other existing off-premise signs. Additionally, off-premise signs are not permitted within 300 feet of a historic district, any site on the National Register of Historic Places, a public park, a public school, a church, or a cemetery. Currently, there are no known off-premise signs or other restrictive elements located within 300 feet of the proposed sign. Section 1796-050K3 prohibits the construction of off-premise signs when the sign structure is within 100 feet of the boundary of a residential district. With regard to the subject property, a residential district exists directly to the east on the opposite side of the alley. However, the sign structure is located at the front of the subject property close to Poplar Street and therefore exceeds the 100-foot limitation. Several years ago, the C2 General Business Zoning District was amended to allow residential uses by right. The zoning definition of residential district does not exist in the code and could be subject to interpretation. For example, the C2 zoning district could be considered to be residential, mixed use, or commercial. The existing land uses surrounding the subject property are by majority residential. However, the long-term redevelopment along South Poplar Street is likely to be commercial or mixed use in nature. The intended purpose of the restriction on locating an off-premise sign close to a residential area is presumed to be because residential uses and off-premise signs can be incompatible. The reason that only heavy commercial or industrial areas allow off-premise signs by right and the C2 district allows it only as a conditional use is because heavy commercial and industrial areas are typically not located close to residential areas, and C2 zoning districts are often directly adjacent. Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out that staff has provided a recommended motion for the Commission's consideration to use it as an example. As you know, we need findings and reasons with conditional use permits. I won't go through that example, but it is there for you to use if you want. We would have 6 exhibits to enter on this case. A is the conditional use permit application. B, map of the 300-foot notification zone. C, legal notice sent to the Star Tribune. D, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet. E, public comment from Valerie White, 504 Milton Avenue. And F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes our report on this item, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain.
Are there any questions of staff from the commission? I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case number PLN 18-022-C. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and state your address. Will the person representing this case come forward and explain the application?
Good evening, Chairman. My name is David Ewald, and I reside at 122 South Elk Street. I've owned this property for about 15 years, and it is a rental property of mine. I own a number of rental properties here in town. I'm interested in having this, have a billboard on it for additional rental income. I have 2 other billboards, one on the corner of CY and 13th, and one on in the middle of the Field of Dreams, which I have a lease with the city to maintain the lawns in order to keep it green and looking good. As you know, advertising is a big deal, and we all use it to buy things and sell things. The city uses it, politicians use it, and I use it. Even our one complaint, Ms. Valerie Wright uses it and has a billboard or a sign on the front of her building advertising that that is for rent and whom to contact. When I first bought this property, it was part of the OID district, and a year and a half ago, the whole Poplar Street corridor got changed from OID to C2. And at that time and at that meeting, I petitioned to change this piece to C4 at that meeting, and they just tabled that and said, no, come back and go through the process. And so that's why I'm here today, is to ask your permission to get a conditional use permit. If you've seen the older pictures of this property, you'd see that it did have a couple of trees on there, and it had a bunch of crumbling sidewalk and steps, and it was very ugly from the street. And a year and a half ago, right after they changed it to C2, I cut the trees down because half of them were dead. I tore out all the icky concrete, re-landscaped the yard, and also I poured footings so that this spring we're going to brick the house so that it also is more attractive. I'm just here to ask you permission to have another billboard. It's an ideal location. Even in the picture that you have there, you can see, well, you probably can't tell the changes, but there used to be a concrete retaining wall down Poplar Street and then up into the driveway. So, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. DeWalt? Mr. Commissioner?
Is the use, is the property still going to be, is that residential, a rental, or?
It is currently zone C2.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. It's currently residential though, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
rented as a.
it's currently being rented to a husband and wife, elderly couple that live there, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. DeWalt.
Chairman Ritter.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Al.
Are you familiar with the lighting plan for the billboard?
You know, Lamar's in charge of the lighting.
Okay.
So I'll let them answer that.
Okay.
Okay, if we could hear from the advertising firm, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name's Tim Stubson. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Crowley Fleck, and here today on behalf of my client Lamar, and I'll pull the expert up here in just a second maybe as well to answer your question on lighting. But to speak to that first, and then maybe just to highlight a couple of issues that staff looked at in their report. On the lighting, it's going to be LED lighting, which is sort of their newest, latest, greatest lighting. It's got light pollution controls on it. It's electronically controlled so that it goes on basically at sunset, but it doesn't stay on all night. It goes off around 11 o'clock or so, and so it's not something that'll be illuminated all night. If there's no advertising on the sign, then there's no illumination on the sign either, and so it's specifically controlled to minimize lighting that doesn't need to be there. In a broader respect, with respect to this location, it really is a good location in many respects because you have it, as the report says, it's bordered on 3 sides by C2. The residential, as you can see here, really the residential area is across the alley, but you've got this structure on Mr. DeWalt's property that sits between the sign and the residential structures on the other side of the alley. And I think that's probably reflected in the fact that you didn't receive any negative feedback from those folks on that other side of the alley. With respect to the one comment that was submitted, I think if you look at the layout of the sign, which is on the very south portion of this property, it really is set up so that there's minimal impact on that neighbor to the north. You can see from the overhead photos that were provided from what Mr. DeWalt said, there actually were a bunch of trees in this front yard that impacted that, that blocked that view for a number of years that were taken down. This is actually set back much further to the south than those trees were. So as far as blocking sunlight, that sort of thing, there shouldn't be any more impact than there had been for years and years as a result of those trees. We believe that really the impacts are sort of baked into the sign restrictions. You've got that 30-foot limitation on the sign. You've got the setback requirements, which this meets. You've got the size requirements on the sign, which this meets. So we believe it is really designed to minimize impacts on the neighboring properties here. And just, I guess one final comment. This is really a sign that's a replacement inventory sign. As years go along and Lamar has lost a number of sign locations up and down Poplar Street, this is one replacement for, frankly, a number of signs that are no longer in existence anymore. So it's fairly important to Lamar to have this location. And frankly, I think the businesses that use this mode of advertisement still have that avenue available to them on Poplar Street. So that's my thumbnail sketch for you, but I'd be happy to answer any more questions before Lamar's representative comes up.
Any questions for Ms. Stimpson?
Can you address the kind of sign? Is this going to be the kind where they actually climb up on it and put on the paper, or is it going to be the kind that you can change?
It's not going to be the rolling digital sign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'll let maybe Jamie Rideout's here from Lamar. I'll let him maybe give you a little bit more description of the plans for the sign.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Rideout with Lamar Advertising, and my address is 5591 Clarence Drive, Windsor, Colorado. In addressing the type of advertisement, it's a static poster billboard, so it's a vinyl that's stretched up and clipped in, so it's not the digital electronic sign. Yes, they'll be servicing the sign, climbing up there as normally we do in the course of business.
Will there be information on both sides of the?
Yes, there'll be advertisements on both sides.
Any other or further questions? Thank you very much. As required by state law, we have to invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this case? Seeing none, there being none, others to speak, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this case?
Good evening. I'm Valerie White. I reside at 504 Milton, Casper. I own the property directly to the north of the proposed billboard at 1321 South Poplar. That is a two-story duplex, the first unit being on the main floor, the second unit being on the second floor. I have a long-term renter in there that has been there 4 years. This sign will block not only some light, but they will have nothing but a view of the back of the billboard. This is going to make this property very difficult to rent. I think it adversely affects not only the rent, but the value of the property. This is my livelihood. I have a mortgage on the property. I need the rent to pay the mortgage. This renter that has been there 4 years will certainly look for another place to live. He's already expressed that. I really can't afford to have this property diminished in price or in rent, either one. I think that putting that billboard up there and having a renter have to look directly into the back of a billboard, they have no view whatsoever except of that billboard. That's just, I can't even imagine trying to rent that property with that situation. 35 feet is a lot of billboard in the air. I just don't see that this is advantageous to me whatsoever. I'm sure I am the only one objecting to it because I'm the only one that is adversely affected by this property, by this sign. I just would ask that you thoroughly consider this because not only does it affect me, but I think that down the road, this is a pretty good sized can of worms that you're opening up for these billboards for these special use permits in Casper. So I would like for you to thoroughly considered this and my opposition to this completely. Any questions?
Any questions? Mrs. White? Thank you. There being no others to speak for or against this case, I now declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion to approve, deny, or table case PLN 18022C. We have for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of discussion, I will make a motion to approve the application.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I'll offer my comment. I do have some reservations about the location of it. At this time, I realize that it's C2, and ultimately, if Poplar Street were developed more consistently with businesses, I think it might be a little more appropriate. But just as I drive by it, and I drive by it every day, if I saw a billboard there, I would think it was out of place.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I might think the same thing. I might think that's out of place and maybe out of step with both the residential aspect as well as the other commercial properties, where they have very, very low on-premise signs. So I have reservations about this as well.
Any other discussion? If none being, cast your vote. Record the vote.
With all members voting no, the motion fails.
The next public hearing for site plan approval for construction of a commercial center, including a bank, a restaurant, and retail spaces. 5,400 total square feet of building footprints, Lot 1. Total addition located at 4140 Centennial Hills Boulevard. Applicant is True Land and Realty. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If after the required public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the site plan meets the minimum requirements of the municipal code, staff recommends the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the site plan with the following 4 conditions. First, all on-site lighting shall be designed to reduce off-site glare and light pollution. All exterior lighting fixtures, including both building and parking lot lighting, shall be fully shielded, full cutoff. Pursuant to the Casper Municipal Code, no light pole may be taller than 30 feet in height. Second, the applicant shall provide a standard 5-foot sidewalk connection from the internal sidewalks on the site to the pedestrian trail along Wyoming Boulevard. Third, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall obtain both city and YDOT approval of an engineered drainage study and shall remove existing drainage easements and establish new ones via a replat. And fourth, prior to the issuance of a building permit or a permit to construct public improvements, water line easements shall be provided in a form acceptable to the city for mains and fire hydrants on the site. Regarding code compliance, staff has complied with all public notice requirements of section 1712-150 pertaining to site plans, including notification of the property owners within 300 feet, posting a sign on the property and publishing legal notice in the Star Tribune. Staff has received 2 public comment letters on this case, which have been included for the commission's review. Mr. Chairman, True Land and Realty has applied for site plan approval for the construction of a commercial center, including a bank, a restaurant, and retail space, totaling 15,400 square feet of building footprints at 4140 Centennial Hills Boulevard, directly west of the Orthopedic Center. The subject property is 2.7 acres in size, is zoned C2 general business, and is surrounded by commercial zoning and uses to the south and east, and residential zoning and uses to the north and west. The parcel is bordered by Southeast Wyoming Boulevard, a state highway to the west, and Centennial Hills Boulevard, a city street on the south. The anticipated land uses to be located on the property are all legal and conforming in the C2 district, and are also in compliance with the additional land use restrictions that were placed on the property during the initial approval of the subdivision and execution of the subdivision agreement. Sheet LS 101 of the site plan provides a shared parking analysis, which the applicant feels justifies a reduction in the cumulative number of parking spaces that are being provided on the site. Section 1712.070A11 of the Municipal Code allows the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve shared parking for mixed-use occupancies when it can be demonstrated that the peak requirement of the occupancies occur at different times of the day. Based on the types of uses and maximum size of the proposed building, the Municipal Code requires a total of 103 parking spaces if each building or use is considered independently. The applicant is proposing to provide a total of 85 spaces based on the analysis. Staff has reviewed the analysis and finds it to be reasonable and supports the concept as an efficient use of the land and having positive impacts on stormwater management. The traffic study has been completed and approved by the city engineer. One of the primary considerations of the study was the access to the site off Centennial Hills Boulevard. The access is much closer to the adjacent access to the Orthopedic Center than is typically allowed. The traffic study suggested that the negative effects of the proximity could be adequately mitigated by making the new access right in and right out only and prohibiting all left turns. Full access to the site, including left turns, is available at the Orthopedic Center entrance. Given the proximity of the site to nearby residences, compatibility must be assured. The site plan shows a denser landscape buffer along the north property line between the commercial center and the existing residences. In addition, there's a significant difference in elevation between the subject property and the residences, which further mitigates any negative effects. Finally, on-site exterior lighting will be appropriately designed to utilize fully shielded, full cutoff fixtures which will not impact neighbors or cause glare issues for motorists on adjacent streets. Section 1712.150 of the Municipal Code requires that the site plan be reviewed in context with its compatibility with adopted plans, specifically the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The Comprehensive Land Use Plan is the city's land use and development policy document that describes the values and ideals expressed by the community for its future during an intensive year-long public input process. Chapter 3 of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan provides principles and goals. Elements of Chapter 3 that may be applicable to the Planning Commission during this review have been summarized at the end of your report. Mr. Chairman, I have 8 exhibits. A is the site plan application, B, vicinity map, C, site plan, D, public notice sent to the newspaper, E, notice of public hearing sent to the property owners within 300 feet, F, public comments from Des Binion, 4111 Stafford Court, G, public comment from Mike and Judy Hamilton, 4117 Stafford Court, and H, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report on this item.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from staff?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Peave?
If my memory serves me correctly, we had this piece of property come up before us a few months ago.
We rezoned it.
Is this an update or?
The purpose, the reason the commission looked at it previously was there was a subdivision restriction on the types of uses that could be allowed on this property, and one of the proposed uses was a restaurant with a possibility of a drive-through, and the Planning Commission City Council considered whether to remove that restriction or not. And ultimately, it was removed, so now restaurants with a drive-through are permitted on this property.
Thank you.
Any other further questions of staff? I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case number PLN 18023S. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, rules of planning and zoning commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and state your address. Would the person representing this particular case come forward and explain the application?
My name is Ken White. I'm at 1117 South Oak Crest. I represent True Land and Realty. And just a little bit of background on that, or a little bit of what we're going to do going forward is the main premise of this is to build a location for Hilltop National Bank. That is the bank that we are working with. The other two buildings on the east side would be speculative builds, which would just be a strip center through there. The building to the north and next to the bank, those would not be built unless sometime down the road, unless we had entered into an agreement with the tenant and we would do a build-to-suit there. So there's no immediate plans to build all buildings immediately at this time. So it would be built in phases over several years, probably more than likely. We are ready to comply with the four suggestions that came back to us, but we do have a question on number 2 about the sidewalk from the inner to Wyoming Boulevard. We are unclear because the sidewalk that comes off the entrance onto Centennial Hills connects and goes around that way. So we're not.
Would you like to answer that question, Craig?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, it's staff's suggestion that given that there's a very nice pedestrian amenity directly north of the site, that we should provide a more direct connection from the site to that, rather than making a pedestrian that's walking along Wyoming Boulevard have to turn the corner, come up Centennial Hills Boulevard almost to the east end of the property before you're find a sidewalk connection into the site. It's been our experience with other businesses in this area that if pedestrians want to get somewhere, they're going to find a way. And you can look at several businesses in this area, and I know of one that they've knocked a fence down and they've trampled landscaping and other things. So I think we ought to make it, in my opinion, make it as easy as possible for pedestrians to get from this very nice amenity along Wyoming Boulevard to the interior of the site, especially if it's going to be, commercial businesses that are going to appeal to people, restaurants and things like that.
I'm sorry, ma'am. With the YDOT easement being down that whole side, would that be contingent upon getting an easement from YDOT to be able to cross that? They may not grant it.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman. I believe sidewalks are typically built in the right-of-way, so we can certainly work with the applicant if that's required, and the city typically can work with YDOT to get those types of amenities if it is required. But I don't think a sidewalk connection would be any big deal for, they expect people to use their sidewalk in their right-of-way now, and connecting to it's logical.
Okay, Dave?
Could our requirement be subject to them actually granting the easement?
I would just say if necessary, if Mr. Chairman, if YDOT doesn't think it's necessary to grant an easement, I don't want to say that they have to.
I don't know how we would comply.
Upon approval of YDOT, maybe.
We'd look at that.
Wallace, you want to make a comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of the record, so if that's something that you want to do, then we just need to clarify that condition with a little bit of additional language that says that it will connect at XYZ point, whichever point you want to make that, subject to the approval of YDOT or an appropriate easement granted therefore.
Okay. We will get to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wallen. Any other questions for Mr. Wallen?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Were you provided the comments that were sent regarding this proposal?
We did. The one I do recall is the Hamilton one was concern of lights and leach smells.
Right. So what, and his request was to avoid having the trash on the north side of the lot, which appears to be exactly where that trash enclosure on the picture is. Like you said, those two items aren't being built right away, but that he had indicated that that would be more disruptive to his property to have it in that location. Are you tied to any of these locations for any of this stuff? Is that, okay. So are you going to do as he said he was hoping that you would be true to your word about being a good neighbor and avoiding creating that issue that he's most concerned with?
We do intend to be a good neighbor. The trash enclosure will be enclosed. I mean, it would be part of the design of the architectural design there. The restaurant that we would look at would be the building on the west side. That building to the north, which is the one which is very close to Mr. Hamilton, he's right behind it. We've been in discussions with Casper Orthopedics this whole time, so they're very familiar with what we're doing. We've worked with them, and we're talking with them about a possible tenant or something in that location that would correspond with their businesses, such as in the medical. So our vision right now is that there would not be the restaurant type at that location, which would have the biggest impact on Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
The only comment that I would like to make is that I travel that road up to 10 times a day at all the maximum cars and people walking back and forth to the schools and stuff. I read the report with great interest from the engineer. It's going to make it. I don't think sidewalks are out of the question, because at 7:30 to 9 in the morning, noon, and then 4 to 6, it's going to be a lot of people using the same amount of roads, and there's not anything going to be increased. So it's going to be quite a show for people who want to drive down it. But it looks like, other than that, it's not all at the same time, the business. So
We have made that traffic study available to both the architects designing this and Worthington Linhart, the School of Engineering, so they're aware of the traffic that the study said we needed to make sure we were aware of.
And I do like the right turn only out of there, because that could be gridlock. Too bad we can't get another lane. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. So what's your plan for the landscaping? Buildings in stages, but landscaping, is that gonna, I mean, I guess my concern is the residents to the north. I mean, is that landscaping, the intention is that's going in with the first phase?
It'd be our intention to fully develop everything with the exception of just constructing the buildings. So all sidewalks, utilities, parking, landscaping would go in initially.
Okay.
And I believe there are some requirements on where those building lots need to be maintained before any construction happens.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir. As required by state law, we have to invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all these hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this particular case?
Chairman, I am Jason Myers with WLC Engineering. Our business address is 200 Pronghorn. I am working with True Land and Realty on the
civil engineering side of this project. First thing I wanted to ask, is there any other technical questions that you guys may have on this? It's turned out to be a very complicated site. One other thing that I'd like to bring forward about the direct connection sidewalk. The applicant is more than willing to put that sidewalk in. I just wanted to share with you some of the challenges that we've seen doing that. We've looked at a lot of different options. What you're going to see from Wyoming Boulevard is going to be a, excuse me, a slope up to the site of anywhere from 12 to 15 feet. And in order to keep the grading within the site, that slope is going to be 4 to 1 or 3 to 1, which is fairly steep. So in order to get a sidewalk connection to the center of the site, we will either have to zigzag it back and forth, which doesn't end up being much shorter than walking around, or go with stairs. That would be the only way to get up in that elevation to get into the site. So just wanted to bring that forward as you guys are considering a clarification of that condition.
Any other questions?
Could that go from that, that'd be the north corner of the site, and could it kind of, I don't know if it need a scissor up it, could it just go up in a straight shot from there and kind of get in between the middle of the bank and is that where the restaurant's going to go, or just to the north of the bank then?
You mean a straight shot, like starting from...
Yeah, like a ramp.
Sliding up?
Yeah, like a ramp.
Yes, it's definitely a possibility. I believe that option, we're probably about 15% slope on a sidewalk, which is very substantial.
Because I'd rather cut through than walk around if I were there. And what's really funny is people will walk that anyway, so that's why I think it's a good idea to really consider. And that way you can also control where they go. And that way they're not walking all over your landscape.
But I agree. I just wanted to bring that out that, you know, when this thing gets built, you're going to have either stairs or a very steep sidewalk.
Stairs keep the borders off.
Yeah, they should.
Thank you.
And skateboarders on.
Or bicycles. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this case? There being no others to speak for or against, I now declare the public hearing closed. Chair will entertain a motion, approve with conditions, deny or table the site plan as proposed for discussion, according to our capable Wallace. We need to fix number 2, or at least make it according to, as far as the standard 5-foot sidewalk. So we will address that issue first.
Well, we could
make
that
the
as part of
motion.
the motion.
Yeah.
That we can amend the recommendations as part of our motion.
Would you like to make the motion?
Well, I made a motion on the first one, I'll give somebody else a chance. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion then to approve the application with the condition of the second staff recommendation to read, subject to any approvals by Wyoming Department of Transportation, the applicant shall provide a standard 5-foot sidewalk or equivalent connection from the internal sidewalks on the site to the pedestrian trail along Wyoming Boulevard.
Are you including the other conditions also?
The other conditions would remain unchanged. I'm only modifying, proposed modification to number 2, staff recommendation number 2.
Any second?
I would second that motion.
Second that. Discussion.
My discussion, and I'll start that off. The two letters that we received, as I read them, weren't really in opposition. They just expressed some issues that they thought would prefer to see addressed. And in my opinion, staff has addressed those issues satisfactorily to me anyway. And the other thing that I see with this site that I think gets lost in the photograph or the drawings is that there is what I would view as a significant elevation change, which I think works in favor of any. I think the elevation change is a natural barrier between this site and the residential areas to the north, and I think that the concerns and the issues raised are partially mitigated by that natural elevation difference. And in my opinion, I don't see there being an issue, but of course I don't live next to it. But to me, that the elevation change is significant enough that I think it works in the applicant's favor.
Any, Mr. Ang?
And engineering okayed that, the access? It just seems like a real complicated one to me.
It is. I think we're all concerned about it and concerned it's going to cause confusion, and we have talked to the applicant about adequately signing it and making sure striping, make sure it's very clear to motorists. But the traffic study did indicate that it was workable.
And the was okay with the parking space reduction because of the difference in time when the businesses would be in use?
Mm-hmm.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. It's our opinion. This is a textbook case of allowing a reduction in parking because of the different times that those types of businesses are utilized.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Well, with the number 2 being changed to reflect the discussion and we'll let's cast your vote. Record the vote.
Aye, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a quick opportunity to say that the site plan, just like conditional uses, has a time limit. So the time limit on a site plan is 3 years. So as long as they exercise the site plan within 3 years, it's good from here on out.
You're all aware of that and understand? Okay. Thank you again. Well, council actions, do we have any that you're aware of, Ms. Becker? Oh. The zone change?
Oh, I'm fine with that. We don't need to walk through it, right?
No. Commission, following items been approved by City Council since last Planning and Zoning Commission.
And Mr. Chairman, if you remember that zone change in North Casper where we had multiple lots along K Street that they wanted to put a trailer in, so they changed to R5. So council followed your recommendation and approved that.
Special issues, commissioner renewals. Review terms, communicate whether or not individual commissioner is interested in continuing to serve. The openings we need to fill.
Who's gone?
Mrs. Medbeck.
I'm going, Fred's going, Don's going, and Ryan's going.
We're nerfs.
Yeah, and Don and Ryan are nerfs.
They're what?
They're little blue
But they're
guys,
seeking help
little
for
blue
that
characters.
condition.
Yes, we're nerfs, not eligible for.
Oh, okay.
And Fred and I need to we need to let them know whether or not we would like to be reappointed. We have a second 3-year term that we could opt into, Fred.
Mr. Chairman, we would like that if we could possibly by the end of next week. I know we have a training on Wednesday. We've got an ad going into the paper this Sunday, advertising that there are openings, but we did not indicate how many. But we will want to get interviews scheduled. Those are due around November 9th. And then we'll put together an interview committee made up of our outgoing planning commissioners, Councilman Hopkins, and staff to interview the candidates. But we do have that going into the paper. So we, again, would love to know you all think about it and let us know. You don't have to do it tonight. If you would like to reapply for those that are eligible, other than Mr. Redder and Mr. Waterbury.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I think I can respond for myself tonight.
Really?
Yes. I thought about it, and I really enjoy being on the commission. Frankly, if it were my choice, I would like to re-up. However, I am having difficulty hearing. I miss a lot, and I'm not as able to participate as well as I wish I could. So I think it would be best that somebody who has a little better hearing take over for me. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity that you have served for the last 3 years.
Thank you, Commissioner. Beth?
Thank you, Fred. Historic, are we done with that there? We get that?
Mr. Chairman, and I can answer for myself. I would be interested in serving for an additional term. So do I need to send another application? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd send another application in too.
No, Randy,
don't need
not
to.
up.
I got 2 more years.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to.
I'll make you pay.
Historic Preservation Commission,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is one of the items we wanted to discuss with you under special issues. We kicked off last month a historic preservation strategic plan, and as few of you participated in the public meetings that we had the one with the Planning Commission specifically, and then we also had a meeting with downtown representation as well as with the actual historic preservation group. We had a lot of public outreach at Art 321 as well as at the Senior Center. The Historic Preservation Commission is very interested in having a planning commissioner representative sit as liaison on their commission, which meets the second Monday of each month at 8:30 a.m. But in discussions with the execution with our comprehensive plan, which has the component with really valuing our history and looking at the growth of Casper with historic preservation in mind, and if possible, our historic treasures, they believe that a planning commissioner would be a nice addition to their discussions at the commission meetings, and then allow for a time that you will get their minutes in the packets. And I know Dee emailed the packet out from their minutes so that you can kind of keep up, all of you, on what is going on with the Historic Preservation Commission, especially with the strategic plan, which will take about a year. And then our hope had been to have a representative and then have that be a part of your agenda going forward, with a liaison preparing a report that just lets the rest of the Planning Commission know what's going on. But again, our hope as staff is that it ties together with our actual comprehensive plan in one of the 6 objectives or big ideas. So that's kind of open to see what you all think.
Chairman, I have a question of staff on that.
yes, sir.
What involvement, if any, does staff have, either officially or unofficially, with the with the Historic Preservation Commission?
We serve the Historic Preservation Commission as we do you. So currently, Craig and Dee will oversee that commission. They'll prepare their minutes. They will prepare the agenda. They will serve as the staff support for that commission. It's been under us probably a little over a year now, maybe even a year and a half. So our role is similar to what we do. And again, they will bring recommendations forward to council. And again, for us to take advantage of grants and be able to look at opportunities for such things as downtown wayfinding signage. We're looking at opportunities now to clean up our downtown gateways, let alone the I-25 corridor, and that's a completely different component with the comprehensive plan. Our hope is through the Historic Preservation Commission that we will have the opportunity to look at some funding mechanisms that can help us have our trails systems identify historic features along the trails, as well as getting people off the highway to enjoy historic Casper as well as downtown and the rest of Casper. So we're really working to take these plans and implement them in partnership with one another. So again, staff sees strength in letting the Planning Commission and the Historic Commission interact, similar to what we've done with the old Yellowstone District as we've gotten that redevelopment area up and going over the last 10 years to keep the communication going with the Planning Commission on what's going on in the OYD. Very similar.
Mr. Chairman, one other question, if I could. When would you like to have an answer as to who might be willing to serve on that?
Since this is, okay, Mr. Chairman, since this is a new concept, you all can noodle it over. We do not have a timeline set in stone, and we might want to wait even until the December meeting. December commission meeting.
Nurse need not apply. Yes, Brandon.
Oh, Liz, is the Center Street underpass on that list?
Yes.
Good, because it's looking bad again. Seems like every 20 years you got to do it.
That Center Street underpass is currently, with council's approval with some 1 cent funding, one of the improvements that
Good.
has been slated to be redone, similar to what we did with the McKinley Street underpass. But we have
Perfect.
to get through an election first.
Yeah, good.
But it's all part of that beautification that we all hope to see.
Yeah,
off
that's
of
the
that
main one.
corridor.
Yeah, that's our main one. And it makes us look like we don't keep stuff up.
That's a lot of information, but you all, we can even talk a little bit more about it Wednesday at our training.
You want to, if there's no further questions, you want to vault right into community development, old business and new business?
Before we vault, what I would like is on the November agenda is to, with your permission, go ahead and add a line item or a subject. We've kind of stenciled this out that would at least account for the Historic Preservation Commission minutes to be included in your packets as a discussion or more as an information, if that would be the commission's approval.
I think we can just raise our hand, or do you want to hit the button? I think it's a good idea. Okay, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. I don't see anything we need to vote on. Liz, if we were to hold off and until we have new members on board, would that put you and or the Preservation Commission in a bind? Or,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, no, that would not.
and to be quite frank, I would be interested in being considered for that, but I don't want to. I think the whole. There might be somebody else that comes on board that would be more qualified or more energetic, more knowledgeable than I. But
along that same point, we will need 2 representatives for the old Yellowstone district, as we have as part of those bylaws, again, once this commission gets new bodies.
Do we put 1 or 2 on it?
We put 2 on the OYD.
And then on the historical, we only need 1, okay.
Just food for thought. I would ask Commissioner Hine if you would be interested in switching gears and going on the Historic Preservation Commission, I'd be willing to take your OID position.
You would?
Just food for thought.
Okay.
I'm not committing to anything.
But you're a historic
Historic,
guru too.
you're more of a history buff than I am. But if you'd be willing to do that, I would sure support that. And
Well, my partner already attends those meetings.
Mr. Chairman, that is what staff would also toss out.
Yeah. We're covered.
Okay.
We have an outstanding assistant architect and his partner on there. But maybe those 2 could on.
Us too? Nah. No. We can talk about it.
Any other?
Can I hit one more while I'm standing here?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Community Development Director. So the other one is, we've had the YO Pass Conference, really the last day and a half. It continues through noon tomorrow. So we're thrilled that Commissioner, I have to say Commissioner King and Commissioner Hine have been representing the Planning Commission there. And so thank you very much. It's great to have our planning commissioners attend that annual planning conference for the state. And we'd love to hear from them to see what they thought about it today.
Who you want to go first?
You always want to go first.
I would add that it's a joint conference this year with the Wyoming Planning Association, WildPass, and the Wyoming Geospatial Organization, which is big into GIS. And Mr. Chairman, I would offer this to you that I think, and staff I hope would too be impressed, that I now know what GUI is.
What is?
GUI.
GUI?
GUI.
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 Would you enlighten us?
Graphical User Interface.
Okay. User interface.
I want that please reflected in the minutes. No, the conference, it's interesting. There's a lot of, because of it being a joint conference, there's a lot of information presented relating to GIS, mapping, data collection, methods of collecting. So it's not strictly limited to community planning issues as some of the previous conferences that I've attended. So it adds a new perspective to it, but I'm finding it interesting, and it runs through noon tomorrow.
Oh, and to add to that, I was amazed at the technology piece and all the uses that they're getting out of it, from specifically the state, WyoDOT uses, everybody's got, all the government agencies have, they are open to use that information, and they've got some incredible maps, and they've had some specialty ones made for the legislators. For instance, they wanted to know how much traffic was on I-40, I-50, I-60, 70, 80, and 90. And maybe it doesn't go down that far south, but they showed a map, and it was really cool. And this was on an average day's use over 2015, and they broke it down into pieces. They actually had it broken down by the 10th of a mile, which is just nuts. But it was so cool to kind of see it branched off, and they probably did it every maybe 100 miles and had a number in there. And it was amazing on an average day, the numbers of trucks that are passing through that. And I guess they wanted to compare I-80 to I-90 and I-70 specifically, just to see how much that really is on the east-west traffic. So that cool stuff like that. So anyway, it was really an eye-opener. And then I also attended the historical one, which was really good, on using that as a historical tool. And he was geared for, they really geared it for Wyoming people, because we're so rural. We have all these small communities, and this guy was really up on stuff that didn't cost anything, that's available on the internet. Just software and just trying to get programs that can help them do their deal without costing an arm and a leg. Because some of these guys don't have any funds, so he was giving them the tools to really start thinking about it and get on it now instead of putting it off. So I thought that was a real good conference for Wyoming, really geared for Wyoming people. And it was, everybody was there. It's a good mix of the big, Cheyenne and Casper usually have a good turnout. But the rest of them, you got people from all these other small towns. And those guys really kind of need some help, in my opinion, on trying to find funding. And then also their technology, their people aren't, as savvy as probably somebody from a bigger city. So it was a real neat way to help these folks. So
I would add too, as you know, besides Randy and myself, there were two staff representatives there from your shop.
It was good to see Aaron again.
We'll segue with that. Again, MPO was there. Mr. Trimbath and I were at a all-day cyber training ransomware course that we needed to attend. So we were glad to have the planning community there. And then at our training next Wednesday, I'll conclude with that, which we have set at the lunch hour again. Dee will send out a reminder about that. But at that meeting, we'll have our new MPO GIS technician, Renee Hardy, who was also in attendance, who does the GIS now work for MPO with some assistance to us too. We'll introduce her to this team because she's not yet met all of you. And so we'll have Aaron pop in and be part of that initial introduction before we get into some of our training. So that is what I have.
Oh, and we also talked about drones, a lot of drones and collecting that was a real big issue and can be a real pricey one too if you get the good equipment. That was kind of cool. Nice toys.
Between the kids and his toys or the cup. Oh, I notice no council liaison here this evening. Are there any other communications? Any other discussions from the members of the commission?
We have an
Staff?
OID meeting Monday.
Oh, excuse me. Fred, do we have a report from the OID?
We do have a report from
Okay,
OID.
all right.
OID met on September 22nd, and 4 items that they covered that I would like to discuss. First one is regarding the update to Midwest Avenue, or the upgrade to Midwest Avenue. Work is to start this month. I don't know if it started yet or not. It's supposed to start in October. Rocky Mountain Power has laid out plans for upgrading the electrical system along the road there, and that includes a new transformer. Phase 1 of the update will go from David to Elm. After they complete that, then phase 2 will be from Elm to Walnut, and phase 3 will be Walnut to Poplar. The second item is the state office building. Demolition is to occur around the end of this month. They'll start construction of a fence so they can start the construction of the buildings. That'll start around December 1st of the fence. The Art Council and local artists are partnering for landscaping and artwork in the building, around the building. They're also considering a name for the state building. So if anybody has some suggestions, you might advance those.
The Becker Building.
Pardon?
The Becker Building.
There's a story somewhere.
It looks like a vector.
Well, you don't want the honor, Liz?
Actually, I think I suggested that. Anyway, the next item is the Plains Building, the request for proposal. The RFP went out on September 7th. They do not have a date, or did not have a date as of September 22nd for the time for them to be, the request to be in. That will be announced later. An open house was held for people who are interested, September 26th and October 11th. And the appraisal prices on each of the buildings has gone down. The livery stable was originally $340,000, is now $300,000. The others have correspondingly gone down. I don't have the exact figures of where they started from, but the north building that's up for sale is now appraised at $370,000, the middle building at $240,000, and the south building at $235,000. And the last item, just real quickly, is for Christmas, the strands of lights for West Yellowstone have been ordered, and they will be on all light poles on West Yellowstone.
There we go.
And that ends my report.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you very much. Yes. So isn't that RFP for 6 months?
Due February 14th, 2019.
Okay. Or any other communications? There being no further business to conduct, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I would
sorry?
move to adjourn the meeting.
It's not 10 after.
I would second that.
It's moved and seconded.
So if somebody voted no, what, I mean, if we didn't get 4 positive votes to
Or
adjourn,
abstain.
would we have to stay?
Denver Broncos.
If they don't know they can stay here.
I abstain. I have a problem with that.
Wow, hard group.